Hey everyone, I'm Eric. This is my wife Julie. We are The Blended Life, and today we are going to be talking about...
We're talking about decision making, how to make good decisions, how to come about it in a way that honors all the people in your blended family. Enjoy.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Blended Life.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. We're talking about decision making in our blended families. So, when we think about making decisions in our blended families, I think this is a really big point of contention in blended family marriages. It certainly is a point of contention in co-parenting if you don't have a super healthy, cohesive co-parenting relationship. And it all comes down to decision makings, how you make decisions, how you go about making decisions. And if you take a moment to just think about your family and your marriage and co-parenting relationships and the things that you have to decide on a daily basis, big things, small things, and how you go about it, I'm curious, do you feel like there's arguments surrounding that? Like you make a decision and then you get punished, or you make a decision and that upsets someone and that leads to an argument. What are your thoughts about, do you feel like that also, like decision making starts arguments, right?
It depends on the decision. It depends on the situation. And in a blended family, we are called to make decisions in so many different places with so many different people. And I think that's where you're headed. It's when you're making those fine-tuned decisions in your blended family. Unique situations call for unique problem solving, and a lot of times when you get creative and someone else isn't on the same page with you, or you haven't ran it past them first, or it's a split-second decision because things
in the moment.
And the day's just not going the way that you figured it would be. And all of a sudden you have to make a split-second decision. I thought we were having nice steak dinners tonight, but all of a sudden now you got to run to McDonald's because the day isn't going right, and little Johnny needs to get to practice a half hour early because something else needs to happen. You know what I mean? It's like those little things that come up. Mm-hmm. And so you make that decision. It's like, well, now someone comes home and they're like, wait, I thought we were having steak dinner. What's this?
Their whole
What's
day
this chicken McRibeye?
explodes. And the consequences of decisions, right?
Yeah.
Now we're having McDonald's, and now all night long is ruined.
No pun intended. So
yeah.
Maybe the next morning.
But because decision making can be one of those things that makes your spouse feel like they're not your teammate. The way you make decisions for your own kids, listen, even if you're a step parent who's extremely involved and you make a decision for your stepchildren, that can cause drama because maybe your spouse or the co-parent of your spouse, right? Your spouse's ex gets wind of the decision you made or how you handled a situation, or maybe what was said to the stepchild or an experience you let them have, and it just creates drama.
Right.
It creates upset and conflict, and that's, it's a hard spot.
Well,
either way.
It's a lot easier to create drama in the other household probably than it is to create drama in your own household, because there's that flexibility, there's that distance that allows that drama to grow and allows that talking to happen and allows the emotions to flare, because you aren't a team all day, every day with those people.
With the exes,
yes, you only are technically a team when you're co-parenting. At least that's how most of us feel.
Right.
It's like this is the only time, but other time it's almost in a lot of situations, it's almost an opposing team. I know a lot of divorced couples and a lot of co-parent couples look at the other family as an opposing team. They're not on the same track. They're not on the same mindset. They really dislike the other team,
and
the other family.
And they're hell bent on my team's gonna win.
Yeah,
They're hell bent on tearing your team apart. And I like what you said about that. There's more time for seeds planted to sink in when the kids are away. So that's really hard. And when kids come back into your home, I talk a lot about with people, and we've experienced it. It's like when the kids are away from us and they return home to us, there's this adjustment period that takes place sometimes. I don't really experience it too much with my kids anymore, but in the beginning when things were raw and were fresh and we were at war with each other as co-parents, and we just, we couldn't get our act together to be peaceful co-parents, you would see the kids come home and they would be have attitudes, or they felt very disjointed and disconnected. And it took them some time to kind of acclimate back into our home and with us.
Adjust to the other team, to the other schedule, to the other playbook,
right. Because what was implanted had time to sink and grow. And then it's have to mindset shift when they're back. And
the bummer with that is that it's being treated like two teams, opposing teams, when at the end of the day, these kids play for both teams. These kids are part of both teams. These kids want both teams to win. So as parents, we should want the same for our kids. We should want the same for the other household, the other family, because if the other household is winning and the other household is up and they are, not down on their luck, but they're doing well, they're doing okay, that means when our kids go over there, our kids are going to thrive. Our kids are going to probably be in a happier environment and doing better. It's when that other team is losing that our kids are going to probably go into a more negative environment. And the talking and the seed planting and all of that is going to be more, it's going to be, there's going to be more, there's going to be a bigger abundance of it.
That's right.
And at the end of the day, if we can get on the same team to at least maybe not opposing teams, but maybe just not caring so much about the other team, maybe not talking so much about the other team, maybe not worrying so much about what this other family has going, as long as your kids are happy, healthy, and thriving, just be okay with that. Just let that settle, let that sink,
Yeah, and creating space for the kids to be able to enjoy being on both teams.
Right.
They're going to get different skills playing for two different teams. They're going to learn different lessons playing for two different teams. They're going to have twice the opportunity to grow and to meet new people and make memories. And, if we could look at it as an opportunity for our kids instead of an affront to us, if we can make that mindset shift and create space by backing off of the seed planting of that team's bad, that team does it wrong.
Well, the other thing is the kids are going to be more comfortable on those transitions going from house to house because they're going to feel confident in the other household, in this household. It's when the kids are shut off from being able to talk about, mention anything about the other household, when they're isolated, when it's you're at our house and you're only at our house, and that other household doesn't exist. That other team does not exist.
That's
I don't want to hear about them.
Yes.
Yeah. And how did that make you feel? What did that do to you as a child when you wanted to come home and you've been off at summer and summer camp and hanging out with your other family, and you have been making memories? Because a summertime as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, probably up until about 13 years old, 12 or 13 years old, is a lifetime. Your summer is an entire year as an adult. That's what it felt like.
As a kid, you mean?
So no. As a kid, it feels like an entire year to us adults. It's forever as a kid, and all these memories, and each day is a new experience and a new. So when you come home and you're not allowed to talk about that at all, what's that do to you as a child?
Well, I didn't know it then, obviously, because as a kid, you're not aware, and you don't know how to even put into words what you're feeling. You haven't gotten your bandwidth of, emotional knowledge, like this is what this means. It takes growth. But now looking back, not being able to talk about, like at my dad's house, I was not allowed to talk about my mom or my stepdad. I wasn't allowed to talk about like Eric was saying, my experiences, my how we did things, or my friends. Like
that is your life. That's where you lived the entire year minus the summer, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was summers were my biggest time spent with my dad, and then I would go on like Christmas break or Thanksgiving break or spring break. Like if I had big chunks of time during the school year, I would go visit him. But it was really hard. It made me feel like it wasn't okay to be me in relationship with really important people in my life. Like in order to have a relationship with my father, it wasn't okay to be me. And gosh, I don't want to get like, it's like making me very emotional right now. And I think it's a really deep wound I have. And you probably experience the shit of that wound in our relationship sometimes, because it's really deep, but it's an identity crisis as a kid. Like you have to part of yourself you have to die to in order to be in relationship with someone else. Like you have to hide part of yourself, or you have to deny part of yourself to be loved and accepted by someone that is really important to you. We're naturally born wanting relationship with our parents, as toxic and weird as they all are. And gosh, I've had toxic relationship with all my parents at some point. Well, and it creates deep wounds that now affect relationships.
Well,
right?
And you're talking about relationships, and I think a lot of people can probably relate. If you guys can't relate to this as a stepchild, you guys can probably relate to this in a relationship at some point in time where you can't be yourself. You can't show up and be yourself. You can't be the human that you want to be in this relationship. And when you're in it, it's like, okay, well, this is what I know. This is what feels all right. Part of you knows something's not right. Maybe your friends are telling you something's not right. But deep down inside, you're like, I can't just be myself. And I think a lot more people can relate to that, to understand what this feels like. And if you take that to bigger picture, this is what our kids are experiencing between households. And hopefully yours aren't. Maybe they are not, but if they are, if you're realizing they're experiencing this at the other household, or maybe they're experiencing this in your household, and you don't have to raise your hand and jump up and be like, yeah, this is what
I kind of want people to. Please do.
This is what we're putting our kids through. But I want people to recognize this. If you're like, man, our kids are being suppressed wherever they are in one situation or another, well, think about what this is going to do to their long-term health, their mental state of mind, their relationships, who they're becoming. Because if we don't allow our kids to become who they are going to become, and that doesn't mean just letting them go and letting them run all willy-nilly and be who they want and exactly what they want to do. What was it? Was it Big Daddy? Is that the name?
What is happening right now?
With Adam Sandler. With Adam Sandler. What's the name of the movie? It was like one of my favorites, and I just completely blanked because it came out of nowhere. But when he basically lets the kid dress up and be exactly who he wants to be, eat exactly what he wants to eat, and do exactly what he wants to do.
I don't think I've seen this movie.
Oh my gosh, it's a classic. Everyone knows what I'm talking about except for
me.
you.
Usually.
Yeah, usually. So basically, they come to find out, like, yeah, this isn't the best way to let my kid. He's babysitting. He's basically just filling in,
And what's the result?
The result is, like, we need to guide our kids.
Oh, yeah.
We let our kids be who they want to be, develop who they want to be. But as parents, as step parents, it's our calling to guide these children. help them make the right decisions and talk with them. We had lunch yesterday with Lori and Jerry Short from the authors who you've done.
So Lori Short wrote Grace-Filled Step Parenting, which I mail to all my coaching clients.
Yes.
And I've done, we've done a live series on Instagram. You can go back in our videos and watch it. But yeah, Lori Short wrote Grace-Filled Step Parenting.
So my point is, though, we are called to have these conversations with our children, to let them become who they want to be, but also giving them their paths, showing them what their paths are. You can either go left or you can go right, but this is what's down this path and this is what's down this path. It's our job as parents, and we are having a conversation about this, to have these very pointed conversations with our kids. Take the time to talk about things and talk about consequences and what this probably looks like and what this probably looks like. What does this path look like? It's allowing our kids to grow and become who they're going to become, but as parents, as step parents, guiding our kids and showing them this is what the future probably looks like. And it's not because we're mind readers. It's not because we know all. It's because we are older. We have wisdom. We have taken paths ourselves. We have had friends and acquaintances and people we know who have taken certain paths, some great, some not so great, and these are the results. These are the outcomes. So use our wisdom and our knowledge and our past to help guide our children, and let them be comfortable and let them talk about the other family if that's what they want to talk about and experience. And I mean, just a little sidebar to this, if they want to come home and they want to talk crap about the other family, again, use that experience to be like, listen, it's all right to vent and feel this way, but let's not, let's knock down the negativity. Let's not become a gossip crew, and
right. Don't feed into it. Like, don't be like, your kids come home and they're complaining about the other house and you're like, oh, this is feeding my soul right now. I'm so excited. Like,
I'm glad they see it. Let's jump on this bandwagon and have a shit fest.
But better to use it as an opportunity to help your children learn to work through hardship. That you, like, what relationships are. Just because you're experiencing a hardship with the other parent, how can you get through that? How can you stay connected through that? How can we help you be back in relationship with that other parent? Like, use it to teach your kids how to work through rough patches in relationships, because the truth is, as long as they're alive, they're going to have rough patches in relationship, whether it's coworkers, friendships, with their teachers, maybe it's with their coaches, and eventually with their spouses and their own children. And maybe they're going to be having a hardship with you, and you've given them skills and tools now that you've jumped on in opportunity instead of jumping on the bandwagon of like, they are horrible people. And I can't believe they would do that. And that's what I'm talking about.
Well, like you said at the beginning of this, it's like, if it's feeding my soul, like I like this feeling. Well, what it's going to do is it's going to teach our kids to have that same sort of feeling, to have that. What it ultimately is going to do is it's going to teach our kids to manipulate and play sides.
Yeah.
And then our kids are going to come home and they're going to talk about the other family to us. But then they're going to go to the other household and they're going to talk crap about our family to that household. And before you know it, like, our kids are just caught up in drama.
And they play both sides against each other.
They play both sides against each other.
Yeah.
But also, this is just creating a very toxic human being that's going to grow up to be like that. And that's not who we want around,
No. And I want to kind of explain why kids do that. Kids who feel out of control will play both sides against each other to feel in control, because they learn that they can be accepted if I go to the other household and I talk crap and I'm, I hate my mom at my dad's house, and that's really like connecting and bonding me to my dad, because my dad also hates mom. And so in order to find favor with dad, in connection with dad, I've learned that if I jump on the hate mom bandwagon, even though that's not my heart, but I can connect with him on that, that's how I'm going to survive dad's house. That's how I'm going to feel connected and appreciated in dad's house. And that's very toxic. This is why you don't allow your kids to talk shit and do that, because that is how they're going to go seek connection with other people. And let me tell you, that's not a way to have lasting connection and meaningful relationships. So it's really important that you and this is a decision you make, right? Like, we're talking today about decision making. So when your kids come home and they want to play both sides against the middle because they want to feel some sort of way in control, like they can gain that appreciation connection by how they behave, you have a choice to, how am I going to handle this? Am I going to sit and love it and agree, like, yeah, dad's horrible? Or am I going to start to try to help bridge relationships because we see the bigger picture here? And I also want to go back a couple things that we were talking about and not allowing your kids to talk. So allow your kids to talk and then help them through it, right? Let them complain, let them vent, let them have space to feel. But then how are you going to take that information that you're given and better your children with it? If you don't allow your kids to talk about mom and dad, and you give, like the experience I had growing up where I wasn't allowed to, right? You create in your kids an identity crisis. And when you create in anyone an identity crisis, that relationship is filled with anxiety. That relationship is filled with stress. That relationship is filled with depression. And you tell me if that's a sustainable way to do relationships. No, I don't have a relationship with my dad anymore or my stepmom. I laid it down. It was too much anxiety. It was too stressful. I was too hurt. And so I had to lay that relationship down for my own well-being. It took me till I was 35 years old to do that. So I had 35 years of unnecessary stress and anxiety and hurt and pain that I was carrying around.
Well, and it wasn't just a one-day thing. It wasn't just like 35 years old, I'm sick of this, boom, I'm cutting this off, like, and no more. This was something that you carried from a little girl and had to deal with and had to struggle with until you were 35 years old. And then that's when it finally added up to enough and it had gotten far enough that you're like, all right, you know what? I'm done doing this.
Yeah.
But it was a very long time coming. I mean, from the time you can remember to the time you stopped and basically made a significant change was probably a full 30 years of you carrying this around. I mean, maybe you were before, you just didn't know it, but you could probably remember back to about when you were 5 years old and then on. That was a solid 30 years that took.
Yeah. And so that's what I want to tell you. You may not have a relationship with your kids if you do that forever. There's consequences. Like, if I could tell the world this, your decision making has consequences. And you may not see the consequences for 30 years. But it's really important when you're making decisions for your kids, for your co-parenting relationship, because that affects your kids, in your marriage, that you understand that as much as you don't want, like, I think people my biggest pet peeve with anyone is that they think that there are no consequences for their action or lack of action. Either way, whatever you decide, however you handle or decide to do something, like, I'm just going to behave and I expect there's zero consequences. This entitlement that, I don't know if it's the generation, but I would say I experienced this in co-parenting. And I'm not perfect. I think that I have operated like that. Like, I expect to behave in a certain way and have no consequences. And it's a really big disservice we do to our kids. And it's a really big disservice we do to our relationships. Because, mindful, intentional living will help you break free from maybe ruined relationships. And so when we're co-parenting, specifically, and you can tell me what you think about this, and because we both have years of co-parenting
Right.
under our belt, and we've not done it perfectly. Man, I'm
No, but we
super
learn.
emotional and triggered a lot, and I react. I shoot from the hip and I react, and I'm bummed about how I handled that, right? Later down the road.
But do you feel like you've learned from that? Like you do that as often now?
No. I
No.
feel like I've really shifted that, but I think when you're decision making with your co-parent, it needs to be 0% about the co-parent and 100% about the best interest of the kid. I don't care if you hate your co-parent. We all have history. We're not married anymore, right? There's a lot there, but there's two things I will say about this. When your co-parent when your co-parent triggers you, because a lot of time we all have PTSD from our past relationships. And so when we have to decision make with our co-parent, the way they talk to us, the way things are said, the pokes that they make, their demeanor could be triggering. The logic could be triggering because you don't understand it. You're like, what's I can't even. But see, when you can let that be validating as to why, instead of getting upset about the triggers, and allowing yourself to be validated why you're not in this relationship anymore, thank God this isn't my daily life anymore. I am so grateful I'm released from that. And you can bring gratitude around it. It's a bit weird because you should be triggered and upset and emotional, right? I'm talking about PTSD from relationships. But if you can be like, you know what? I'm so happy that's not my life and I don't have to deal with that every day. I am validated. Thank you for reminding me why it didn't work. Because sometimes we feel guilty too. We feel guilty we couldn't keep our families together. We feel guilty for the choices we made.
And when you're feeling like that too, you don't need to tell the person, thank you, I'm validated, thank you. Because all that's going to do is just cause problems.
I have done that once.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It felt really nice, if I'm being honest.
But this is also you learning. Are you still doing stuff like that? Are you still saying things
No,
like
because
that?
then I'm just being hurtful, and I don't
And
want.
that's
I
it.
don't
You're
want to
just
be that way.
stirring up something else. You're just creating more drama. But something that you can always do in a situation like that, when you're feeling like this, that I do myself, and I think you do yourself, is when I'm dealing with this co-parent situation, and I'm like, man, I really want to just give it back to them right now. I really want to just
And you're
give them a
equipped to
taste.
do that.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Or just everyone?
We talked about this last time.
Yeah.
No, you have a special gift for cutting people.
Yeah, but I don't.
You do.
I'm very good at controlling it, and I don't like to do that. And this is a very, very common situation where I control that, and I ask myself, how is this going to affect my child or my kids?
Yeah.
If I do this, what is the outcome going to look like? If I say this, if I tell them, this is why we're not together, this is why we hate each other, this is why whatever the thing is.
Thank you so much for your for acting in a way that ended our marriage.
Yeah.
Can I send you a thank you card?
Yeah. So if you ask yourself, how is this going to affect my kid? And you take that minute and you take 2 minutes and you pause and you play out the scenario, what's likely to happen, because probably we can figure it out. How's this going to affect my kid? How's this going to affect the rest of my day? How's this going to affect my entire household? But ultimately, how's this going to affect my kid? And you use that to make your decision.
Yeah.
It's like, well.
And this is how you can lead your co-parent, because it's really great for you or I to have this awareness and bring that forth to co-parenting.
Right.
But oftentimes the other person doesn't share the same awareness and goal, right? And so this is really cool because you can lead your co-parent, and this is something you can always put in a text, in an email, or verbally say. This is in the best interest of our children. My goal, and you can always remind your co-parent, this decision I feel is in the best interest of the kids. And you always talk about the best interest of the kids, annoyingly so.
Well,
so when
that's
your
what it
parent
should be
gets
about anyways.
It does, but how often
does
we
it
have
get
friends
in
and
what's in the best
us,
interest just for us?
or
And
how I'm going to make a decision just to spite you. I'm going to make a decision just so you feel how I feel.
I feel like that's a lot of how co-parenting goes, how a lot of people
Right.
are treated and treat others. And that's
Right.
what it's about. And that's not at all what it's about.
Right. It's about hurting the other person. It's about your team winning, their team losing. It's about everything else. And it's not about the kids winning. Like, if we go back, like, the kids should be happy to go from one team to the next. And it be okay that each team is different. And they get to have the fullness of Team A and the fullness of Team B. And, you know, and be okay with that. Like, if our kids could just be cool, like being excited. And I feel like this is, you know, my kids are excited to go have experiences with their dad. I would hope they're excited to come have experiences in our home too. Like, it's good. It's good for our children to experience the fullness of each parent and make memories and have relationships. Like, it only hurts our kids to have bad relationships with the other parent. You know, and so how we can support our kids is just creating space and making it all about their best interest. When we're decision making, you know, with our co-parents especially, not making it about either co-parent and always about the kid.
Right.
And I think you'll be steered right. I think, you know, regardless of how they act, you're all about the best interest of the kids. Annoyingly, nauseingly so they come to you and they're going to be like, oh, she's going to be about the best interest of the kids. Like, that's how they should always look at you. That's how they should, they should always expect from you, regardless if they're
if that's the way you're approaching things, though, that might calm down the situation. That might calm down the communication. You might not talk as much anymore because they understand where you're going to come from. And if they are someone that always comes to you from a little bit, you know, out of play and it's not for the best interest of the kid, it might stop that communication because they're like, I already know what they're going to say. I already know what they're about.
Yep.
And that's important. You want them to know what you're about. You want them to know. Sorry, I'm not Canadian. About. You want them to know what you stand for.
Yeah, and it's not them.
And it's
not the hatred you have towards them.
It's the kids. You want them to know that you stand for the best interest of the kids.
Yeah.
And that is going to ultimately put them in their place.
And it might calm it down over time. This just takes time because, you know, in co-parenting, you probably have decades of learning to not trust each other, that each other is not a safe place. You are not married anymore. There was probably a lot of broken trust and hurt and pain. So you go into this co-parenting relationship really not trusting the other person. So you have decades of distrust to break, and that just takes time. But when you are all about the kid's best interest, and that's it, over time, it kind of calms down that distrust. Like, they can start learning to trust in you in the sense that you're not out to get them anymore, that you're not out to ruin relationship between you, that, you know, them and your children. You're really just about the kids. And that is something that you can work with, right? That is something that you guys, even if you disagree, because it might be your, you know, what you think is in the best interest of the kids is not in alignment with what they think is the best interest of the kids. But when you're disagreeing over that versus, you know, I'm out to get you, I'm out to ruin relationship, it's a different way of disagreeing that it can prove fruitful, and compromise comes from that, right? How can we both get what we want because we're both really important in our kids' lives and we're both the parents? So what's the compromise look here? You're more easily able to reach that if you come from a place of trusting versus like we're just always tapping into the PTSD and distrust that we had in our relationship.
Well, and that just, what you just said kind of gave me an epiphany. And I don't know if this is a real saying or not.
It is
but
now.
I feel like happy people make happy decisions. Is that a thing? Like,
Well,
you're
there's
talking
the
about
thing that-
tapping into the PTSD.
Yeah.
And that creates this negativity that is just deep down inside you. It hurts.
Yeah.
It gives you just this pain, and you know what that feels like. It doesn't feel good. It's almost a depression that sinks in, and that seeps out on others. So
Well, that's the person that makes decisions.
yeah.
A hurt angry, depressed, negative person making decisions,
Right.
what do you think they're going to look like versus
versus someone who's happy. And so
Mhm.
this is also like kind of, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, this is what you do as a health and life coach for stepmoms, for blended family moms, for divorced moms. Like, you help them discover who they are so they don't live in this type of negativity. You help them become the best version of them. So when it comes to decision-making time like this, they feel a lot better about themselves. They feel a lot more confident about themselves. They are able to make a better, healthier decision because they are better and healthier. They understand who they are. They are confident in who they are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's making decisions out of a place that's in alignment with who you want to be. Because so often in times, we are making decisions out of a place of like fear, or making decisions out of a place of anger or upset or hurt. And so when we make decisions from that place, and the truth is that's not who we want to be. Those aren't our values. Like, most of us don't I want to live in anger. Like, I really value that. That's a really good thing. Like, most of us don't think like that. Most of us don't want to live in fear and don't want to live in hurt. But that's how we make decisions and who we show up as. And that is then the experience everyone else has from us. And so, like, what I do as a coach, especially for blended family women, is that I get them in alignment with who they want to be. And making decisions from a place of who you want to be is like stress-free, anxiety-free, a thing of confidence, right? Like, now I'm showing up from a place of confidence because even my decision-making is in alignment with my values and my beliefs, and I'm confident in that. And I'm not guilty. I'm not ashamed. I'm not full of fear and anxiety and stress. And breaking free from that, man, that's who that's who your kids get to experience in your blended family. That's who your co-parent gets to experience. That's who your spouse gets to experience. It's closing that gap of who do I want to be? Who am I actually showing up as? When we can close that gap, we choke out anxiety, fear, depression, guilt, shame, all those things. And then we are less concerned about other people because they can't feed what's in the middle. See, what's in the middle, all that stress and anxiety, like, people can feed on that energy and create more of it. But if it's not there, it can't be fed on, so you can walk confident and you show up very differently. So if you want more information about life coaching with me, you can email me at becomingheardnow@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram. We have I don't even know, we don't talk about it a lot. I have there's two Instagram, there's two social media accounts on Facebook, but there's Blended Life, which is, our podcast and our passion project for blended families. But then there's also my life coaching, which is Becoming Heard. And you can, reach out in either way. You can always reach out and get more information. But I would love to work with you if you feel like, gosh, I'm showing up differently than I want to, differently than I know I am. Like, I'm not even living into my purpose and my calling. I don't even know what my purpose and calling is in my blended family.
Well, and as kids, we all saw ourselves differently. We're like, are you who you thought you were going to be when you were 5 years old, when you were playing house as a little girl in your bedroom, But
I certainly wasn't going to be married 3 times. No. I can tell you that. Well, listen.
How about 6?
No, but like, really, I was going to, because my parents were divorced and I experienced that hurt and pain. I didn't want that for myself or my kids. And so when I got married at 18 even, I was like, I want to be married once, and that choice got kind of taken away from me. I didn't really have a say in that, but, that was like what I was going to do because my parents lived differently. And then now here I am, just like my parents. And that wasn't even necessarily, it wasn't in my control, but I shouldn't have gotten married at 18 either. You know, like I made a choice that had a consequence that, you know, would you support your kids getting married at 18? You know?
Yeah, but do you look back at that and dwell on that and go, man, that one situation right there dictated who I am now. That all changed my life, and I put everything in that basket, and I am now who I am because of that. Or have you created your own life path that has gotten you to where you are right now? I mean, I can tell you at 5 years old, at 15, at 25, at 30 years old, I never, ever, ever would have told you, yes, I will be sitting here in a studio with my wife talking about blended families and trying to change the 70% failure rate statistic, trying to make things better. No, I was out filming trophy trucks, filming dirt bikes, you know, skating, playing hockey. That was life. And to think like, look where I am now. Look what I do now.
Even for
as
a living.
passion project, as a side thing. Like, this is not what I had intended for my life, but here I am now. Do I regret it? Do I hang it on any one situation? Like, no, I love who I am and where I am now, but it's because of life decisions, and I mean, ultimately God's plan has brought me to where I am. So everything plays into effect. Now I either learn from the past or I dwell on the past. Yeah, I've had a lot of really crappy hands dealt to me, but I've also had a lot of really great hands dealt to me. I have had a lot of situations that I would never wish upon my children growing up. But it's also the things that have gotten me to where I am and what I have learned from and what I have grown from. And it's why I am a stronger person, and probably why I have more compassion and understanding and grace for other people in situations like this.
Yeah.
You know, we learn from situations like that. So,
yeah, I feel like for me, man, I was going to be an elementary school teacher. That's what I went to college for. Since I was a kid, that was what I thought I was going to do. Like
that's what you were doing when you were playing house?
Like, you know, when you're dreaming about what you're going to be when you grow up. A lot of kids didn't know. I knew. Like, from day one, the first time I ever considered it, I was going to be a teacher. And it's no wonder I'm a coach. It kind of falls in the same category. My heart is that. But I thought I'd be married once. You know, I was going to live in, so things that were important to me, you know, when I was considering what my life was going to look like, I was going to be a teacher. I was going to be married once because I didn't want to deal with divorce and have kids. Like, I was so upset by divorce that I wasn't going to do that. I was going to live, when I bought my first house, you're going to laugh at this, I was like, I want to have one house that my kids have all their memories in. So I didn't care about moving around.
Yeah, you have the check marks on the door or the pantry door.
Yes.
Or,
and then the grandkids would come home and the kids would come back from wherever they were living, and this was their family home, that all their memories, and that was really important, like very important to me, that my kids had a home to come back to where all their memories were made, that felt like coming home, and having that was so important to me. And those were like the three things that I really held on to when I was considering, like, what do I want for my life? You know, like as far as like values and what I was working towards. Well, none of that played out, obviously. But what I will tell you, I've learned now at 40, being married 3 times, experiencing divorce, being left in a marriage and leaving a marriage. Both.
What's the third one?
This one I can't do it again. So, you're just stuck with me.
Bummer.
I know.
That's what I signed up for, so, all right.
But what I will say is, looking back, my life has set me up for this moment. So, I knew I wouldn't be happy as a teacher. I knew I wasn't going to be happy running a family business, right? Like all the things that I thought in seasons that came and opportunities that presented themselves. Like, I had no idea life coaching was going to be my purpose, passion, and calling. You know, I had no idea speaking into people's lives like back then. I didn't even know, was life coaching a thing when I was a kid? I don't know. But I'm like, to be here now and experience purpose, you know, I can look back now and be like, I couldn't speak to divorce. Like, we were having this conversation because sometimes the truth is Eric and I do this podcast, and I think we both have felt it like, gosh, we struggle a lot in our blended family, but here we are leading a blended family podcast, telling people, you know, giving them perspective and sharing like how to do things. And we're not perfect. We struggle. And so then it feels like, gosh, are we imposters? Because our blended family is far from perfect. You know, I'm coaching people to keep their families together, and I've been divorced 3 times. But here's what I've come to really considering that is like, if I haven't experienced all of it, even like being left in a marriage and leaving a marriage and having both of those experiences, because I feel like that's unique. You know, being a stepkid who really went through some really trauma and mental health stuff as a stepchild. Like, why did I have to experience that? Why did I have to like experience divorce and all my ideals shattered what I thought my life was going to be? Man, I couldn't work with people and do what I do now without being able to speak to those experiences, to really understand the consequence of decisions, to really fully realize, like, if you want this, don't do this. Trust me. Like, I bring an authenticity to what I speak about because I've lived it, and the value of that, to be able to speak into people's lives and to help people and to relate to people and to get down like in the mud with people because I've been there, is way more powerful and purposeful, and God can use that, like, versus me just like, you know, having all my ideals. Like, I've been married once, and I have a white picket fence, and I have one family home, and I'm a teacher, I mean.
But I'm going to teach you how to have the perfect blended family,
Yeah,
and not fail. It, you know what?
It's like
what was the
that
sign? That
would be imposter.
Yeah, what was the sign on hanging up at the restaurant we went to last night? What was it? Never trust a skinny cook. You know, but it's also. It's kind of like that for, how about weight loss? Are you going to trust someone to teach you how to lose weight?
If they've never dealt with weight?
If they're 100 pounds, they have never dealt with weight issues. They're ripped, they're skinny, they're on the cover of Sports Illustrated because they have never been, you know.
They've never had to lose 20 pounds.
They've never had to lose 20 pounds.
Or
are they the best
from
person to teach you how to lose weight? Like, nah, you're probably just built different.
Your genetics.
Your genetics are good and like good for you, but some of us, we're normal people, you know? So
yeah, that's a really good analogy.
So where we sit here and we're still not we're nowhere near we are light years away from perfect, but
we struggle.
We are struggling, but also that's the reason why we are able to sit here and talk about things, because we're dealing with them. We don't deal with all of them right away. Like, we're at a place right now, but we have 10 more places before we can talk about something else. So I think that's a cool thing that keeps our podcast really moving, is that we are experiencing different things as we go. Yeah. And this might not ever be able to end, because right now, again, we talked about it yesterday, right now what we're experiencing with our kids is something totally different than what we're going to experience 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now with our kids. Our kids, we're going to eventually have to deal with
the consequences of what we did now.
Well, the consequences,
later.
But also the developments. We're going to have to deal with the relationships. Our kids aren't quite in that stage yet of relationship building. You know, they definitely are not in the stage of parenting. We're not in the stage yet of blended family grandparenting. You know, those are just to name a few things.
So are you saying this podcast could last forever because there's always something?
There's always going to be something.
Are we going to be 80 years old? Like,
well, you're going to be 80 before I am, but yes.
That's really cool to tell everyone. Thanks.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot, and now I want to give you guys kind of like some tips, because whether it's co-parent, we spent a great deal of time talking about like co-parenting decision making, right? And the pitting the two families and all that. But the truth is, in your marriage, it can seem like you're on two different teams, right? You can have that same experience of like, and kids can pit you guys against each other in your own home as parent and step parent. So it translates no matter if you're co-parenting or you're experiencing, feeling like you're not on the same team as your spouse in your blended family marriage. But what I want to talk about is how then it's, great you guys underlined that decision making can be really hard, and we could, it can create consequences that aren't good for our blended family, for our co-parenting, and especially for our kids. So now what? Now that we've highlighted the problem, I kind of want to talk about how can we go about decision making. I know with co-parenting, we said, kids first, their best interest, right? That's the place you operate from when you're decision making. But what else? And so the first thing I want to talk about is be a truth seeker. When you're going to make a decision, we need to put aside emotionalism and your emotions and get clear-headed about the truth. What is the truth of the circumstance? And then consider, if I'm weigh decisions, right? We're going to weigh out different decisions because we're open that there's more than one way to do something. There is more than one right way.
Well, I think a lot of us get stuck there. It's like it's our way or no way, and that comes with the co-parenting too. It's like, how come they don't understand or see it the way I do?
Right. There's one right way.
Yeah.
But the truth is, there's more than there's a plethora of decisions you could make, no matter what the situation is. And so, what is the truth of, like, if I do this? You can start to kind of figure out like the consequence. The truth is this decision in the best interest of the kids? Or is the truth that this decision's in my best interest and going to make me feel good? Is the truth that this is even a decision that needs to be made right now? Or is this a decision that I can give some thought and put some time into? In church this morning, one thing that our pastor said that I had actually, it's really interesting. I have notes before our podcast, and then I take notes in church, and they were like, this point is aligned.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's the same thing, but it's like trying to avoid, like, when a situation comes up or something comes to your attention and you have the urgency of the moment, like that urgency in the moment to take action or shoot from the hip or make the decision or react. Versus like acting with the end in mind. So when you're decision making, you need to understand, am I making this decision out of a place from urgency of the moment? Which sometimes you have to, like McDonald's or pot roast. I have to decide. Like I don't have 3 days to decide. It's dinner's in an hour, right? But am I making a decision from a place of urgency in the moment? Or am I going to make a decision that's going to be with the end in mind, the greater good? Like, what is the end game? If I want my kid to go to college, I'm going to make decisions. If that's his end game, his goal for his life, then I have to make decisions that are going to be, in the moment he might try to get me to, like, I'm going to stay home and skip class. Well, I can understand that, but is that going to get you to your end goal? What is going to benefit your end game versus this in the moment, emotional, whatever you're in? And so I think that when you're in a marriage in your blended family, you have to really take that into consideration, because the end game in your blended family is for your marriage to last. So is your decision making for your own kids even, or how you go about making decisions, honoring a lasting marriage? Or Are you behaving in a way that's breaking connection and putting your marriage in jeopardy? Because I think the point of contention in married couple, blended family life is that someone feels left out. You know, someone feels like they just made a decision without even considering me. And I'm supposed to be like your person. But we're not even talking about it. Like, I'm just telling you that this is happening, or I'm not even telling you. I'm just letting something happen without even discussing it with you and how it would affect you and if you're okay with it. Because it doesn't, like, it comes off as like your spouse doesn't matter. You're just letting something happen without even giving the discussion piece. Because the truth is, there are times that circumstances are going to dictate an outcome that are beyond your control in blended family life, right? And the truth is, your spouse isn't really going to have a say because it's out of your control. Do you know what I'm trying to say? You get that?
I get that.
So what then? Well, your spouse is a human in your home and supposedly an important person to you.
Supposedly.
You know? So even if an outcome is inevitable due to circumstances beyond your control, it's really important that you decide to allow time and space for your partner to be able to express their feelings and opinions, even if it doesn't changes the it isn't going to change the outcome. But that is how you bridge connection. But when you do not take the time to let your partner be seen or heard, even if it's not going to change anything, it breaks connection in your relationship. But when you genuinely, like, I know this has to happen. It's circumstances beyond my control. And I'm just wondering, how are you with this? Because I care about you in it. You know, you may be good with it. You may not be good with it. I just want to check in, because if you're not good with it, then how can I support you through it? These are the conversations that bring intimacy in marriage. These are the conversations that build connection. But when you allow stuff to happen and you don't even, like, your spouse doesn't even get any kind of anything, how do you think it's going to make them feel? Like they don't matter. Like that they are powerless, that they don't have a say, that they are not even a teammate. You're not even checking in. You're just allowing shit to go. And so I think that that's a really important piece to being able to keep connection. And I would teach your kids this too, right? Your kids have no control. They're being told where they're going, what they're doing. And so if you can even do this with your children, to, like, you may not be able to control that you're going to dad's house next week, but do you have, like, are you cool? Like, check in. How do you feel about it? And it may not change the outcome of the custody agreement, but at least your child has an identity. They know where they belong, and they're building connection with you. Does that make sense? What do you think about all that?
Well, it made me think. I got a pop quiz.
Okay.
What's more expensive, a meal at McDonald's or a steak at dinner for the whole family?
This is an interesting question, because you may think McDonald's is cheaper, but down the road, if you ate McDonald's every day, your health would deteriorate so much that you'd spend more in, like, trying to fix your health than if you just would have had the steak dinner.
But is McDonald's cheaper than a steak dinner?
Yes.
My thought was...
Not anymore. I don't know.
My thought was a gallon of gasoline. Or diesel. I don't know. It's all expensive. Anyways.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good rant there. That was an excellent rant.
And I'm just trying to help people have connection in marriage.
It's right on point. I think we all can get on board with that.
Because this is something we're horrible at. This is something that, you know, because, I mean, Eric and I experience breaking connection in our relationship, right?
Daily.
But it's like, if I'm considering, like, well, how could we come back to that? Like, how can we bridge back connection? You know, I think it's just letting the other person feel like they matter.
Yeah, and it takes effort. It takes effort from both people. It's not one of those like you feel disconnected and hopefully the other person comes back. It truly takes two.
Yeah, and you guys have to both be working towards the same goal of like, is my goal me feeling good, or is my goal a lasting marriage? Because you do kind of have to die to yourself sometimes for the greater good. There are going to be sometimes you don't fucking want to talk.
There she is, you guys.
You know? There's going to be times where conversation's going to be exhausting and you've had a long day and I don't want to do it. You know, like I don't have time for you. I don't have time for you. I'm too busy. Or I choose this pleasure and this over like investing in you. Right? There comes to like, are we so into ourselves and our own personal experiences that we are dismissing our marriages? And that's like kind of where I'm at with where we're at right now. I'm like, with conversations that we've had recently, I'm like, there's definitely things I need to change because I've been into myself, you know, and I don't know if you feel like that about you at all.
So you're saying no McDonald's for lunch?
No. I'm saying no McDonald's for lunch. It's not for our greater good.
It's not for our greater good.
Anyway, anything else you want to add to that before we
not
say
to that,
sayonara?
but I just want to add that I'm grateful for everyone that listens to this or watches this on YouTube.
It takes a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
To make it this far, we are over an hour in. For you guys to make it this far means that you really care about your blended families or yourself or you and your spouse. It means you care. You care about something somewhere along the line. So good for you. Like if we are the only podcast you listen to, like awesome. If you're seeking to grow and be greater and find direction in your life, then talk to Julie at becomingheardnow@gmail.com. But also listen to other podcasts. There's lots of good value and wisdom. And we're not the only ones, obviously. But just good for you for seeking that out and trying to better yourself and your life and your family. And give yourselves a hand. So, anyways, you guys.
Thanks, you guys, for tuning in to this episode of Blended Life.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. And we will talk to you soon.
Bye.